and being gender nonconforming. And the next question is, what does it mean to have a gender that's not male or female? And I think we can combine those two questions. And I'm going to take a little break while y'all answer, because this is JD's question.
Well, I don't feel like the rest of us can really answer that.
Yeah, I should preface this that I only represent myself.
Yes.
I am not like I have not been elected ambassador for all people.
But you know way more about it than I do.
But what if we got you a sash?
Right? And a crown, a tiara. You want a tiara?
Diplomatic immunity?
Ooh. Give me diplomatic immunity. Maybe we could give Finn diplomatic immunity. That would be just dangerous.
That would be fun. Oh, hell yeah.
Please don't do that.
Yes.
Please do not
It's
do
rough
that.
enough already some days.
Anyway, so difference between non-binary and non-conforming, right? That's the first one?
Yeah.
Transgender and non-conforming.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then what does it
between being
mean?
transgender and being gender non-conforming, and what does it mean to be a gender that's not male or female?
Okay, so we've already said that language is messy. So new terms out there, people using terms in lots of new ways. The way that I like to separate these is that being gender non-conforming more often has to do with the expression and behavior, or even just the perception, like someone else perceiving you, breaking whatever happened to be there. A lot of people do not identify with that gender nonconformity. So, for instance, you can have a cis woman, so a cisgender woman, a person who is who told they're a girl at birth and then grow up, continue to identify as a girl, and they can dress very tomboyish or very butch. It could be suits, etc., and that would be an example of being gender non-conforming without that being an identity and not a transgender identity. Yeah, while transgender, so much more about how you consider yourself, and I think that's the heart of it, how you consider yourself, how you conceptualize yourself, so that's your identity. And then often also involves how you interact with others, whether that's conforming or non-conforming. Because there are plenty of trans people who are very much conforming.
Sure, there are trans people that are very binary in their expression. That is correct. Hello. Welcome with the pretty nails. Very nice. And see, I would consider myself probably non-conforming in the sense that I don't look very girly most of the time. But I don't consider myself trans. So there's an example of exactly what you're talking about. Although I'm not very butch. I am. No.
What's the term? Chapstick lesbian?
Chapstick?
I may be a lip. I think I'm a
or chapstick.
I think I'm a lip gloss lesbian.
There you go.
Because you have the lipstick lesbian,
Right.
which is the like super girly girl,
Femme.
and you have the butch lesbian, which is the that a trans man?
No, that's
or a
not
stud.
even say it. I'm gonna get in trouble.
Stud is the other term.
Oh, stud, yes. I was never called a stud. I was always called a baby butch. That's what I was labeled all the time, baby butch.
Chapstick lesbian is the either with like your haircut that you have right now, or like the faux hawk, and then they might wear the girly cut plaid flannel shirt. And I had a friend that was a chapstick lesbian, and she just like embodied the aesthetic of the chapstick lesbian.
Well, I don't know what I'd be considered because I'm also bisexual as opposed to being a lesbian. So there you go. So I just mess everything up. Labels.
Lip gloss bisexual.
I'm a lip gloss bisexual. I like it
That's
because I do like lip
awesome.
gloss. I don't really like chapstick actually at all. I hate it.
Not even the flavored ones.
Well, maybe you haven't just met the right chapstick.
Maybe I haven't.
Right.
I need a chocolate chapstick. I could probably be about some chocolate chapstick.
Well,
I think that's just smearing chocolate on it.
Too many.
Oh, yes, all about that.
somehow got off with
to
Sorry, everybody.
To maybe pull this back in.
Next question, please.
Segue into the next question. Why wouldn't
I think we're
you
still
get
doing the-
counseling
Oh, yeah.
so that you would enjoy chapstick?
But I wouldn't enjoy it. If she wears lipstick or chapstick, I won't kiss her.
But
'Cause I don't like it.
I'm trying to rein us back. I failed and I apologize.
Counseling, go for it.
Because our next question is, why don't transgender people get counseling to accept the gender they were assigned at birth? For me, the answer is simple. Because it doesn't work.
Right.
It does not work.
If you could have told me that there is a medication or a coping mechanism you could teach me or some sort of program I could go through that instead of having to go through all the trauma of figuring out who I am, I could have just been who the world told me, heck yeah, I would have signed up for that in a heartbeat. If you could have fixed what I saw was broken.
You could have found that blue pill.
It is not fixable.
Because
Unless-
it's not broken.
Right. Because you're not broken.
Mm-hmm.
The fix is getting counseling, becoming the person, getting the skills to learn who you are. Right? I mean, that's the fix.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like that kind of goes, like sitting here thinking about it, it kind of reminds me of some conversations I've had with some people recently where they seem to believe that gender dysphoria and body dysmorphia are the same thing. And really the biggest difference between the two of those and why you can get counseling for body dysmorphia and you can't really get counseling to fix gender dysphoria is body dysmorphia is what you see in the mirror is not reality. It's you are 120 pounds and you look in the mirror and you perceive yourself as being 400 pounds. Whereas gender dysphoria is you see what is in the mirror and it does not match who you know you are. But what you see in the mirror is not a hallucination created by your own mind. It's you see what you have there, and it is what is really there.
That's a good explanation.
Well, I could kind of, I don't know. I mean, that's a great explanation. But I know for me, what I saw in the mirror made it worse for me. It made it worse because I didn't see in the mirror what I saw in my head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I saw a guy in my head. Trying on clothes was one of the most depressive things I ever had to do, ever. That's why I barely ever wore new clothes and stuff. But, yeah.
Yeah. In some ways, I would almost say, like, the closest that you could ethically get to that sort of counseling to accept the gender that you were assigned at birth would be almost more like counseling someone who's going through a medical condition. That, like, okay, that you are experiencing this, and finding counseling to address the stress of it, to address the social changes that happen to it, the life changes, etc. But not counseling to say that you are wrong about this thing that's really, really important to you. That is a core part of your being. That actually tends to cause more harm than good. You could also do counseling to help someone live in line with their values, and you have to really explore what those values are. Because it's not a counselor's place to say to a trans person, you must transition. And this is how you must transition. This is how to be transgender. We're not about that.
Right.
It's figuring out what are your goals, and we will do what is within our within our ethical scope to do that. Because there are definitely people who are whose self-concept does not match up with the gender that they were assigned at birth, but then still want to live by their family's expectations, by their spiritual and religious obligations and upbringing, etc. And that might mean not going through hormones, not going through surgeries, etc. Like how can you work towards happiness I guess in the scope of your own values, and how do you resolve where conflicts might arise? If it worked to just to convert people, yeah, we would do it, but it tends to not work in the long term.
Well, we would do it if people wanted us to.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
It
called
would depend on
conversion
their goal.
therapy. Conversion therapy has been banned now in 12
But it doesn't
states,
work.
I
That's
think.
what we're saying. Is it doesn't
Right.
work.
12, 17 states, I can't remember now. Illinois just banned it. Yay! Go Illinois!
We have another question in the comments. Have there been any funny or interesting encounters you've had due to an assumption, miscommunication, or misinterpretation of your gender or sexuality?
Say it again.
It's funny stories.
Yeah, funny stories of being misgendered or misinterpreted.
Oh.
Yeah, just generally misinterpreted for your gender or sexuality.
I don't know.
So there were times, especially in my transition, where from behind I was much more passable than from the front.
That makes sense.
And there were a few
I can say that too.
But there were more than a few times where I might get a interested look from usually a guy until they got to my neck. So that they would start at the feet and be like, and it's funny now. It hurt a lot then.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure it did.
But the look on their face now is like in my head now.
Right.
I was maybe like a couple of months on T, so like I didn't have really any of the facial hair, and my body was still very curvy. But I was pumping gas, and right on the other end of the block from here is a Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall. I had to remember what the name of it was. So the Jehovah's Witnesses are everywhere. And so I was pumping gas, and this Jehovah's Witness comes up to me to hand me a pamphlet and tell me the good word of Jehovah. And he could not figure out what my gender was. And so I was, sir, ma'am, sir, ma'am, sir, ma'am. Sometimes multiple times within the same sentence, and I did not correct him.
No, just let him keep going.
I just watched him struggle the whole time with just like stony face, and he's just like, and sir, ma'am, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
It was always sir and then ma'am.
So people talk about passing, so that people just assume that would be as close to like passing for me as possible. That would be fantastic. Moving back and forth.
You'd be yes?
It's like, oh yeah.
Sir, ma'am? Yes.
I will say, I mean, I'm going on my 9th year transitioning, which is unbelievable. And just a couple of months ago, there was like a 2-day span that I kept getting misgendered. Gender me? Seriously, people. Not even my voice. I mean, and I think it was all 3 times I was at the store or somewhere, and I think it was they just said ma'am automatically and then looked up and went. But, of course, not realizing that they're talking to a trans person, I'm like, what? And they just look at me and go, no, sir, it's okay. No, sir. You know.
Well, you look like a scary white
Because
man
if it
now.
had been any rights. Because I just look at him and go, what? So, yeah. And of course, that happened when I first started transitioning because you especially trans men, you get in this certain mode where you're really androgynous and you can't tell for the voice or the clothing or appearance which one you are. So I would get it at the drive-through window. I'd get ma'am, and then they'd see me and they go, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir."
I got
So
that
yeah,
one as well.
it took forever for my voice to change too.
I got that mostly because my voice started to change within the first couple of weeks. But I went for the first 4 to 6 months. I was just kind of sounding like this a lot.
I remember that. I remember that. Like a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
Don't fight the load.
Don't fight the road. That's what I was told.
Yeah. Come into the first like Trans-Cendence meeting going, "Hi, my name is Vienna."
Yep, I remember that. I remember that. That was funny.
But yeah, like but then of course like if you have all that going on and then you're also not binding and you're just wearing like a sports bra, then
Or a
it's
big sweatshirt.
and then people are really just like looking for a clue anywhere, and they're just like.
I have a question for all the trans guys out there. Do you wear larger shoes than you're supposed to make your feet look larger?
Oh, I don't have to. I already have big feet.
I have tiny feet, so I'm just curious.
I do.
You know,
I do not have.
I wear
tiny feet.
I wear a half size larger on some shoes to make my feet.
Man, if I was going to transition, I'd be in trouble.
Because men
Those
typically
baby
have larger feet than women. So, yep. It's just one of the ways that I cope, with my dysphoria.
I came from a family of large-footed people.
My dad wore an 11. I wear an 8 in mids. So, that's pretty small feet. All right, let's go to the next one. What does gender transition mean?
To me, it's any step you take to get your life, that includes your body, your social, your legal, to
Mental.
get that in line with who you know yourself to be.
I don't think we need any other definition. That's perfect.
Right. Not all trans people will medically transition or even
Legally
socially
or
transition.
socially,
Uh,
it's whatever you
yep.
need to get yourself to where
Exactly.
you need to be.
Exactly.
Or what
There
you
is-
can do.
There's
some cases,
a list of things to do if you're going to transition, and most of that includes, here's how you get your documents changed. Here's what you do after you change your documents. Most of it is legal stuff. It's not necessarily medical stuff, because everyone is an individual and chooses to have all the surgeries or no surgeries, or have hormone treatment or not do hormone treatment. And sometimes it's we have a lot of senior citizens who are just now starting their transition after they've retired, or a parent has passed away, or they're divorced, or their kids are gone. We see that a lot. And a lot they're not able to take hormones and change that way. So they change as much as they can in their expression.
I think one form of transition that gets overlooked is kind of your own internal self-concept transition of, like, for me, just being able to see myself and transition from ambiguity, don't know what it is, and also trying to conform to certain standards, to just being released from that. Just how do I see myself? How do I begin to trust myself? That's a core transition for myself, at least.
What is that?
So looking at the comments, we have at least one guy out there who does also sometimes get
Get a little bit bigger size.
Yeah.
Nice.
likes to wear larger.
Thanks, Brazil. Thank you. I'm glad I don't feel like I'm the only one. But I do. I wear larger shoe size, especially when I dress up. My dress shoes are all half size larger, and I just wear more socks because it helps my person. It helps me inside feel like, especially when I was running for office last year. Because I'm the only trans person in a room of 600 people, and especially as a politician, You know, I'm not a necessarily a conformist, but I also know where those lines are and those boundaries are, especially when you're doing something as important as I was doing. That I had to be able to hit those boundaries and go, okay, can't go any further than that, but I also need to look the part, you know, because I look like a typical white Texan cis hetero guy. I even drive a truck. I mean, so yeah.
Jumping off real quick on the segue of the shoe thing.
Mm-hmm.
Lifts.
Oh yeah, lifts. I know a lot of guys that wear lifts. Yeah.
I bought some and I cannot wear them for very long, even though they are super comfortable. But I have no arch in my foot. So, and I didn't like wearing high heels for the same reason of just the strain of the foot being like that.
Right.
And that's essentially what you're doing when you're wearing those lifts, because they're just a wedge that you put inside your shoe.
Right.
And so you're essentially wearing heels, but they look like you're wearing loafers.
Right. I was doing a panel one night, and it was only showed transpose extended, and so we did the panel afterwards. And I guess this girl came in. You may remember this girl came in later, and we did the panel. And when I stood up and walked down the audience, she looked at me and she goes, "I really thought you were taller. You talk like you're a lot." What?
That's a voice,
right? I just laughed.
Attitude behind it.
Right. Just laughed. I thought, I wish I was. I wish hormones made you taller. That would be great.
Which
That
it goes
would be
back
great.
to my mom when we told her that Finn was transitioning to male. She got this
That was
very worried
hilarious.
look on her face, and she said, "Well, I'm worried you're going to be a little guy, and that people are gonna pick on you." It was really cute.
That's what she was worried about.
Yeah.
Was that I would be a small guy and get picked on. It was
I
very sweet.
I'm always really happy when I'm walking around in my office, and because we have people from all over the world, so we have people of all different heights.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm always happy when I walk through the hallway, because I'm only 5'3", but when I walk by a cis dude that comes up to here on me, I'm like, yes. Not the shortest one in the office.
Yeah, you should not transition to an office in the Netherlands over there, where a lot of tall men are, a lot of
Just
tall
be like-
women for that matter. They're very tall over
Right.
there.
So-
Okay,
Asia.
Generally.
We're gonna skip one
I wasn't
because we've
gonna
already
say
explained this. Why is transgender equality important?
Well, there's one that got added that's not on your printout.
Oh,
It's how do transgender people cope with the trauma of gender dysphoria? We didn't talk about coping with dysphoria. We talked about
Well,
what it is,
Yeah.
okay.
but we haven't talked
Well,
about
we can talk about that. Yeah.
The most coping with dysphoria we've talked about is shoes.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, not necessarily. We've talked about getting counseling. We've talked about, so, but yeah.
So, for me, and I know this isn't everybody's option, by far, I threw money at the problem.
Right.
Surgeries are expensive. Therapy's expensive. Medication's expensive. And I just kept doing that until I got as close to who I think I should look and feel like. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I have big hands. I wish I could wear smaller shoes to have smaller feet,
Right.
but it doesn't work in that direction. And when those feelings crop up, I cope with it by focusing on the good things that I see about myself, the parts of me that do match what they're supposed to match. And that's not always my body. Sometimes that's my life. I can look at the fact that my kid calls me mom. I can look at the fact that all of the people at work see me. They see me. To me, it's really just paying attention to the ways that you are you instead of the ways that you don't feel you are.
Absolutely. Good. That's a good answer.
Music, too. Some days you can't pick out the good things. Distraction. I will jam on some Britney
Oh, yeah.
Spears.
Britney
and
Spears.
feel so much more.
That's a good point because music can really change your mood and it can bring out parts of yourself. Like you said, you feel really feminine when you listen to her. I think that's true. That certain music does make you feel like that.
JD.
Well, I was about to add on to this and ask about, and also consider the second. For those of us that are the partners of people who experience the dysphoria, how do we cope and help cope? Because so not like non-binary, but I'm also a partner to someone who is trans and experiences much more dysphoria than I do. But I haven't quite figured out how to answer my own question, so I'm going to point that towards you while I think about this.
Yeah.
I'm going to say
use it as a support for a person. Yeah.
it is extremely difficult because you are watching somebody that you love and care a great deal for fall into a dark pit sometimes. And there's really not a lot you can do about that. There was a while when Finn was saving up for top surgery, and it was such a slow process and it took so long because it's so expensive, and he would get really down about, I'm never going to get enough money,
The car would break, or
we'd have to spend the money on something else, and he would just go, we're never going to do this, we're never going to do this, and he would just be so down about it. And it's tough wearing a binder, and especially in hot weather, and having to wear it everywhere you go, and it's such a pain in the butt. I'm like, he would even put it on when friends were coming over, like there was just never a time when he could just be like he would be without, once he'll have top surgery. And all I could do at that point was just keep reassuring him that we were going to eventually make enough money, that I promised him we would. And to say, he would say, well, I'm feeling very dysphoric, and I'd remind him of all of his masculine traits, and that would seem to help. But ultimately, there's not a lot that you as the partner of a trans person can do to make another person feel differently, except to be there and to listen. And I would say that SOFAs, as you mentioned before, significant others, family, friends, and allies, you need other SOFAs to be your support. So that when you are feeling unsure about your partner's transition, you have somebody you can talk to that's not your partner, because they feel like that kind of talk negates their transition. So for example, when Finn first started talking about having top surgery, I had been 22 years in a straight marriage, and I had been looking forward to having that experience of being with somebody who had breasts. And that was very hard for me at first, even though I agreed with his decision and I wanted him to be happy. There was also a certain amount of grief for that for me. And so I tried to explain it to a couple friends. Finn and I didn't talk about it much, but I talked to one of my friends about it, and she just wasn't getting it. I said, put your husband on. I said, now imagine your wife wakes up tomorrow morning and she wants to cut her breasts off.
Right.
And he goes, oh God. I said, that person got it, because they're in a very similar role. Even though that person doesn't have a wife that's transitioning, they can understand it. But I took that kind of talk other places. I didn't bring that talk to Finn because Finn didn't need that. Because he already at the very beginning of his transition was saying, if you don't want me to do this, I won't. And I'm like, no, you're going to do this for you. I'm not going to let you do that. And so I didn't want to make any statement that would make him feel like he shouldn't be his real self, because that was very important to me. And I think also as a SOFA, then you have to remind both your partner and yourself what the goal is, and keep both of you focused on that goal. And I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, there were, when my ex-spouse was coming out, there were a lot of times I saw them down in this same dark pit that I had been in. And it's really hard to know, to accept that the rope that I used to climb out of my pit didn't fit their hands.
Right.
I could let them know that there is a way out,
Are we still
but I
live?
couldn't
Oh, yeah,
show
we're
it
still
to him.
We're just not showing up on the TV yet.
Yeah. Well, that's a
Which is
unique
fine.
perspective, really, both for you and JD. You know, because it's something that you've both dealt with, but that you know your partner can't deal with it in exactly the same way as you did.
I know for me, sometimes, I mean, I still get just small bouts of gender dysphoria now.
Yeah, he
Um,
does.
A lot of times I'll look at old pictures of myself and look at myself in the mirror now, because there's a lot of times that the trans person can't see the changes because you see yourself every day in that mirror, so you're not really seeing the changes, and you're not. So a lot of times I'll go back and look at pictures of like Susan and I, we first started dating, or my pictures right before, and I'm like, whoa, okay, yeah, I have changed, and that helps me, but that works for me. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but for me, like, I stayed in counseling for almost a year, and I didn't stay in counseling almost a year because of gender dysphoria. I had to get and all the crap that came along with it, from my childhood and from school and being bullied and all this other crap, and little kids asking me when I was female body, are you a boy or a girl? Because I got that all the time when I was female body. And it's ironic now that nobody would ask me that now. But I remember how hurtful that was when kids would ask me that. When adults would. I had a cop ask me that one time. I had a cop call me an it one time. A cop called me an it. I don't know what the hell you are. And that's what he said. Yeah. And that's harmful. And that happened in high school, and I still remember it to this day.
And that's a perfect answer to the next question, which is, why is transgender equality important? Because transgender people are not its.
Right. And we're not your sideshow. We're not your freak show.
It's important for the same reason that feminine equality is important.
Right.
That racial equality is important. Because people equality is important.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't realize how many things that people with majority identities just take for granted.
Yes.
Things
Right.
like even if even if you're in an at-will state and can be fired for whatever reason, in some state, like you wouldn't be able to you can be fired for whatever reason, so they fire you, no words, but they wouldn't be able to say, I'm firing you because you are black.
Right.
It's like lawsuit right there, a
Right.
really easy lawsuit.
Exactly.
But
We fought that battle.
Yeah, and in so many states now, they an employer can explicitly say, "I'm firing you because you're transgender."
Yep.
No legal recourse in so many different states. Maybe in some cities, maybe in some counties, or maybe by your business's policies, etc. But that's something that so many people just take for granted.
Well, and as of yesterday, our federal government just made it easier for contractors to fire you because based on their religious beliefs. Yeah. I mean, y'all know me. I fight transgender equality every day. But in my eyes, it's not even just, I'm just like you. It's human equality. I pay taxes. I vote. I was born in this country. I have the same exact rights and the same my neighbor. Because we were both born in this country, we both work, we both pay taxes, I deserve the same rights as that person. I deserve to be able to work the same as that person. There should be no difference whatsoever. The fact that I take hormones like another medication, like any other medication, and I happen to have had a plastic surgery done, which, as a matter of fact, my sister had almost the same surgery done. And yet, I'm denied rights that she's denied. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense.
Well, in
whatsoever.
reality, you had a surgery that a lot of people go through when they have breast cancer. And those
Right.
people are lifted up as heroes.
Right. Exactly.
And rightfully so. But that doesn't make...
They're not denied their rights
No.
simply because they had breast cancer.
No.
Or like people who are because there's cis people, usually older cis people that are on hormone replacement therapy because
Right.
your hormones naturally decrease as you age.
Exactly.
So there are middle-aged and older men who get testosterone injections. There are
women who have to take hormones.
There are women who have to take testosterone.
Right.
There sure are.
Right.
Because we have testosterone too, and if we get too low in our testosterone, then it can affect our energy levels, and it can affect our sex drive, just like it can affect a man's.
But the reason it's important is because we're looking at a suicide rate of 41 to 43% suicide rate, attempted suicide rate of our LGBTQ youth.
Mm-hmm.
Adults is not even that much lower in adults.
It's 41 to
we're
43
looking
in
at
adults and
homelessness.
46 in teenagers.
Transgender people have the highest homelessness rate. If you look at human trafficking, 47% of the teenagers who are human trafficked are LGBTQ. Did y'all know that? 47%. It's insane. But what's causing all of this, the unemployment, the uninsured, the homelessness, is society saying, you don't deserve the same rights as this person does. And so it causes the rhetoric, and it causes the bias, and it causes the bigotry, which causes the vicious cycle of everything else that's happening.
We want to hop on to the next one before we continue down the deep.
Yeah.
What's
Getting
the
heavy.
question?
Why are trans people so often grouped with the gay community if sexuality and gender are not connected? I can answer this question really easily. Because we have the anagram, or whatever it's called, LGBTQ, and we have since the 70s, right? Late 60s, early 70s, we have LGBTQ for civil and equal right purposes. It became the group of alphabet soup to encompass the entire community, which then now we see it on everything. What irritates me is when I see it on something, say on a website. I'm not going to use any website as an example because I'll get in trouble. Let's say Joe Blow out there has a website that he says is LGBTQ, and he offers resources for LGBTQ. You go on there looking for resources for trans, and there's nothing. And yet, he's used the T, right? I see this here in Texas with lots of organizations, and there's nothing. And people have just willy-nilly used the LGBTQ anagram for everything. If you go on the Strip, if you go down Cedar Springs, almost every single building on Cedar Springs has LGBTQ somewhere. It's either inside, it's outside, it's on a flag, it's on a book, it's on something. And yet, just a few months ago, we had a trans woman who was assaulted by a security guard in a gay bar on Cedar Springs. And why?
That was one employee being stupid.
Yes,
and
but
they
that
were
was
immediately
But that was one incident in a long line of incidents
Right,
that
right.
has happened at that
right.
bar.
I just want to,
Yes.
for those who heard about the incident, but maybe not the aftermath.
He
The
was fired
company fixed it as quick as they could.
because it went national within hours. I'm just going to say that. That's why. Because I had plenty of other complaints again about that bar from other people that never got on film. There's a difference.
I'm
just
just
gonna say.
loving the
But I am happy that they took action and they did what needed to happen. And now the Strip is doing education for all of the employees on the Strip, which is great.
And
It needs to happen.
to me, the reason we're lumped in is because, like you said, we always have been. Because when LGBT was first conceived as an acronym, back before there was a Q and an I and an
Right.
A, it was believed to be sexual related.
Right.
And now that it's not, we can't really afford to pull ourselves away.
Right, we're too
We
small.
need the protection of the herd, so to speak.
Well, and also when you talk to people who were trans in the 60s, 70s, 80s, before they really had transgender or even necessarily transsexual as a word that they could adopt, it was just gay.
Mm-hmm.
Gay was just the blanket term for everything.
Right. Or queer.
Or queer, but at that time, queer
Yeah,
hadn't
even
been.
It was a different word.
Yeah.
Right.
It
Yeah.
it hadn't been reclaimed,
Right.
and so yeah, it's everybody was gay, and regardless on if you were
A lesbian.
gay, lesbian, trans, ace, any of that.
Yeah.
And then we started having more words to describe things within that umbrella. And kind of an interesting thing that I've been seeing happening recently in the internet culture is gay as an umbrella term is kind of starting to cycle back into vogue, because you have there's it's a weird
Including
thing
lesbians?
including lesbians.
I'm sorry, as a former
Including-
lesbian, no, I take offense to that.
but it's
I'm standing up for my pride here, no.
but it is something. It's something that's used mostly in like pro LGBT
Yeah,
memes,
yeah.
because it's things like the which it's like, are you a sit sideways in a chair gay or sit on the floor gay? Like, there's a joke floating around the internet of that people in the LGBT community don't sit in chairs normally.
Oh, let's get that rumor started. Great. Great. Now somebody's going to sit in a restaurant and somebody's going to attack them because of the way they were sitting. Great. Let's get that rumor floating around out there. That's lovely.
Calm down.
But I'm dead serious. That shit needs to stop, because that's the kind of crap that gets people hurt.
It is, but it's also like the
I'm dead serious about that too.
it's essentially because of the fact the way that it's coming about in internet culture,
Mhm.
it's kids having fun. Because I have yet to see, and this could change at any time, but I have yet to see that being used in a way to attack people. Yet. And it could change. But it's one of those things, it's like, you're not going to be able to go out on the internet and make all of the kids on Tumblr
I
stop
hear you.
making jokes about how they're
I know
sitting in
that.
chairs.
But as we know, the willfully ignorant people out there who are willfully ignorant, who will attack somebody for something like that. You know, and it does happen because we see it happen all the time.
I mean, to be fair, though,
Sorry. Sorry if I offended anybody out there. I
How
apologize.
dare you sit weird in chairs?
Susan, you step out of the room.
Let's go to the next question. Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Hey, everybody, let's go to the next questions.
Why do trans people have to express this openly?
What is this question? Where is this from?
It's one that gets asked.
Let's break this down by words.
It's why.
Have to.
Well, it's why can't you just be trans at home?
Yeah.
Why can't you just go
Right.
into the closet?
Why do I have to
Oh.
see it?
Why does it have to be
Is
in
the
my
real
face?
question. Yeah.
Because it's not about you.
Boom!
Question answered.
That's what I keep getting.
I'm about to spill that tea. But that really is what it comes down to. Is it's like the whole concept. Now I'm gonna get on a soapbox.
Do it.
They're gonna put me in Facebook jail next.
You're right next to me.
So it comes back down to that whole concept of, but why do you have to be gay in front of me? Why do I have to see it? Well, because it's not about you, and because you can dress how you want to dress. You can do all this in public,
Mm-hmm.
but people make this assumption like that it's when it's not what they consider to be normal, it's dirty, it's
Sexual.
and it's
deviant.
like, and
Yeah.
but it that also comes around to the whole the transphobic term of trap, because it's very narcissistic term to use, because it's you're setting a trap for me to fall into, when that's it really has nothing to do with you. And if you're attracted to that person and you find out that they're trans, it's not like they run off to their evil lair and go, ha ha ha, I tricked another one. Like,
Check it off on their agenda to do
yeah.
this.
Right?
Little list on the side of the wall.
And so,
I murdered 5 today.
but that's really what all it comes down to.
Well, I thought the Constitution guaranteed all of us the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you.
And how can you be happy if you're hiding a whole portion of who you are?
To make
Or
everybody
all
else
of who
happy.
You are. That's not being happy. How is it happy? Like, I was asked one time if I had an agenda. You know what my agenda is? My agenda is to be able to go around wherever I go with my partner the same way you get to go to church with my partner the same way you get to work a job just like you get to. My agenda is to be just like you, except less uptight. So that's my life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
And hate
you
fewer people.
Don't get to tell me what I get to do with my life just because it makes you uncomfortable.
Yep.
There are certain rules in society. We have to follow those rules, but everybody has to follow those rules. Things like we can't walk around naked in public. You know, those are rules. We can't, run over people with our car. That's a rule. But everybody follows that rule. When you start making a rule that only applies to certain people, then you might as well go back to the 60s and have a blacks and whites only bathroom and a blacks and whites only water fountain. Mm-hmm. It's a trans and a straight, or it's trans and a cis water fountain. It's a trans and a cis restaurant. It's a trans and cis job. No, that's ridiculous. That is so unconstitutional. There, that's my opinion on it. Oh, I got on a soapbox too. Hey, you didn't go like this.
Because I tried it with Finn and it didn't work.
It didn't work.
But I think we partially answered the question.
Mm-hmm.
Or we've answered a different question. The question we answered was, why should transgender people be allowed to express this openly?
Mm-hmm.
The question was, why do trans people have to express this openly?
Right.
Oh,
And
I
for
gotcha.
me,
Right.
I had to express it openly because not expressing it openly was intensely traumatic. Walking through life every day as somebody who was not me was not a survivable plan. I would not have lived another couple of years if I had not expressed it openly.
And let's for the record state this. It's not the gender dysphoria that causes the suicidal ideation. It is the oppression from society that comes with it, or your own family or group, that causes the suicidal ideation. It is feeling like the other, in quotation marks, that society has tried to shame and put back in that closet. But feeling like you cannot live another day in that closet, or you're going to die.
Yeah, very much so.
I kind of have a story that follows that train, because one of my exes was not the best person in the world, and he, like, when I had gone to college, I had the freedom of being able to explore my gender and sexuality and all of that stuff. And then shortly after I got back to San Antonio after getting out of college, and I started dating this guy, and he straight up told me, like, if you do drag, that's on you, but you're not going to do it around me. And if you are dressed as a man, you and I are not going to be associated with each other. We are, if you are dressed as a man in public, you are not allowed to tell anyone that we are dating.
Can I ask why you were dating this person?
That's a long story that I can tell you later.
Okay.
Because that would take
Especially
up
after that.
Yeah. But he was very stuck on women were not allowed to have. I was not allowed to have hair a haircut that was above my shoulders. And the one time that I did, he did very psychological manipulative punishment in retaliation against me getting it, and I got it cut like maybe an inch above my shoulder, and that was too short. And so that was one of those things where we didn't stay dating for very long. So that would make you feel better.
I'm sitting there going, why?
The short answer was desperation.
I've been there.
But it was one of those things. So I was already dealing with a lot of trauma from before I was dating him, and that just like compounded on top of all of that. And it was one of those things, it's like, it took a few years after I stopped dating him for me to be able to cycle back into exploring that. But during that whole period, just the depression and the suicidal ideation and the panic attacks and all of that stuff were just incrementally worse than they had been even before then. Because at least before then, I was dating somebody who did not care how I expressed my gender. He was really weird about it and really fetishized it in really strange ways. And I can give you more details on that later if you want them. But it's an accurate, these are all accurate concern expressions. But yeah, that really does paint that picture of you have the people that are like, no, you have to be in the closet. That's really what causes a lot of the trauma and psychological issues that people associate so strongly with being trans.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that you have the people who feel like you cannot be trans unless you have like a certain amount of dysphoria and
there is
depression.
no more trans or less trans than anybody else. There is no more trans or less trans than anyone else. Thank you. Next.
I was going to say, put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, that will be going. Yeah, we need to put that. I will also say, as the question is worded, have to express. I am not expressing anything except for who Finn is. That's it. I wear the clothes I'm comfortable in, like everyone else does. I wear the hairstyle I'm comfortable with, like everybody else does. I wear the glasses I'm comfortable wearing. The shoes I'm comfortable wearing. If you were to try and put me in a dress, I would feel very uncomfortable. When I was growing up, when I was in junior high in sports, you have to go to the girls' locker room and change and all that. I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. I felt like I was an intruder in somebody else's space. I knew I was not supposed to be in the girls' dressing room. So I would hide and I would literally wait till everybody left and then I would go and hide and change. Because I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. And if I don't, why would I have those feelings if I wasn't trans or had gender dysphoria? I mean, as a mental health professional, wouldn't that as even a child came and said that to you, wouldn't you be like, wait, I don't think you're supposed to feel that way, right?
Well, it's distress that
Right.
prevents you from functioning as a
Right.
as a fully healthy human being in society. So,
Right. I always felt uncomfortable in girls' bathrooms. I always felt uncomfortable in girls' spaces that were just girls. Like an intruder, and I wasn't supposed to be there. I was going to get in trouble. And that's what gender dysphoria feels like as well. You know, if you're
Well, and
outside
there-
out in society.
Well, and there are studies now that are showing, because there are children coming out young, very young, and of course we don't transition them medically at those young ages, but allowing them to socially transition to wear the clothing they're comfortable in, to wear their hair the way they want to wear their hair, to play with the toys that feel comfortable to them. Just doing those things is raising a whole new generation of children who actually don't have the mental stress that you've seen in some of the adults who did not know those things about themselves, or who were not allowed to express them at a young age. We are going to have a generation of trans folk who are comfortable in their own skin
Yep.
because of being accepted at such a young age.
Yep. A lot less PTSD.
A lot less depression, a lot less anxiety.
Yep.
Yep. Yes.
And the anxiety really falls along in a lot of that. And especially like if you do grow up being bullied a
Mm-hmm.
lot, and I have a whole hypothesis about cause and effect with being trans, being bullied, and then for some people, myself included, you go through this phase of trying so hard to fit in.
Uh-huh.
And opening yourself up to allow certain events and situations to happen because you feel like that's what is expected of you, and
Yeah.
you don't want to be bullied anymore, and
Right.
you don't want to be othered anymore, and so
Right.
you will do anything to fit in.
At your own hindrance.
Yes.
At
Well,
your
and
own
there are
personal
people-
hindrance.
And there are people too that are born more compliant. I was a very compliant child, and I had a lot of friends who put pictures of posters of like male superstars on their wall, and I never felt comfortable doing that. I always thought that was a weird thing to do. I had horses on my wall. But it was expected in my family that you get married to a man and you have children and you do all this thing, so I did what was expected. Now, being bisexual, that was not as uncomfortable for me as it might be, say, for somebody who's a lesbian, or certainly somebody who's trans. But when you go with what is expected, then there is going to be distress. And I would add that people always think that trans people have all of these things because they're trans. Like Finn said, that's not because they're trans. There's plenty of people out there who are cisgender who have depression.
Yeah.
So these are mental health conditions not reserved for the trans community. They're just more prominent in that community because of what they've had to face.
And I will say on that, if you're not a part of this community, or you are a part of this community, and you want to see some numbers that will, inform you and educate you and honestly shock you, go out and look for the 2015 trans survey that NCTE did, National Center for Transgender Equality. The numbers are astounding. If you go in and look at those numbers, that you will understand more of the depression and the PTSD that we're talking about, and you'll see why it happens. Yeah, and the new survey, I saw that they're launching a new survey in 2020. I think it's 2020. The new survey is coming out. But they surveyed over 13,000 trans folks.
That's a lot.
I was one of them. I know that. But the numbers will astound you.
Do we have any questions online?
Not really a whole lot of questions, a lot of comments. Real quick, we're gonna
Take a
take
10-minute break.
Yeah, we're gonna take a 10-minute break, and then we're gonna come back and try and finish up the rest of the questions on the paper. Continue to add your comments. Continue to
Ask
add
us
any
questions.
We'll start with questions in the comments that are there when we get back from the break, and then we'll go back to the paper until more questions come up on there. So
please.
Thank y'all for waiting.
We'll be back.